All right. We won't tell them that your room is a mess. We'll just jump right into the interview. All right. Welcome back.
You're so wonderful.
You love me anyway. All right. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just three nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. So without further ado, we're going to let our special guest, the legendary person that Doc knows, and it wasn't at a bar, Shane Gries, introduce himself. And I probably butchered that, didn't I?
No, you got it right.
Wow. Okay. Put that in your calendar.
I know. My drill sergeant at basic training called me Gears, which
that's cool.
Is the worst anybody's ever massacred my name. But to this day, I won't ever forget it. Great American he was, though. But yeah, my name's Shane Gries. Been on active duty the last 27 years as an infantry officer. First came in the Army 32 years ago with the Army National Guard. Served in Germany for 3 years, Korea for 9, did a year in Afghanistan, been down here in Australia for 2.5 years and counting. Served as a rifle platoon leader, scout platoon leader, rifle company commander, headquarters company commander, battalion S3, battalion XO, battalion commander, speechwriter, deputy chief of staff, and now I'm the U.S. Army attaché at the U.S. Embassy in Canberra, Australia, which is why I'm wearing this ridiculous outfit, because that's how they make us dress at the embassy.
I thought it was because maybe a kangaroo had challenged you to a duel.
Oh, no, don't mess with the Bucks. Those guys are stacked.
I've heard. So is it as dangerous there as they say?
To the land where everything is designed to kill a human.
Just the saltwater crocs up north.
All right. Are you having to wrestle those drop bears we keep hearing so much about?
Yeah, they're nothing. They're good.
All right. So the second part of this introduction, dear listener, is how we first found them. So I actually heard of and met Shane through the Galaxy's Edge community. But what about you, Doc? Tell me what booze was involved.
I don't actually know that any booze was involved. So Shane was kind of infamous among the LibertyCon crowd, particularly with my friends James and Ginger, who I've known you for years and years and years. And so I knew many things about Shane before I actually ever officially met Shane. And yeah, that's how I met him, because not my being drunk, but everybody drunkenly telling me stories and going, "You have to meet Shane. Have you met Shane?" No, dude, this is my first year at the con. Oh, he's not in country right now. He's never in country.
So even when it's not you and booze, there's booze involved. It's like there's a pattern here.
Shh.
Yeah.
I like to start with B.
Sadly, I'm sober 100% right now, though my job does involve drinking. Everybody's familiar with the Game of Thrones quote, "I drink and I know things." Well, that's what an attaché is. So in 2 hours, I have to start my marathon drinking and working routine. So
I thought
you caught me at an off moment right now.
I see you're very upset by this.
I thought that drinking was just implied with the infantry status. At least that's what they told us at Benning.
That's right. Well, they said in this job I got to sacrifice my liver for freedom, but it's already well on its way.
We appreciate your service, sir, and your liver. We appreciate it too.
It salutes you right back.
So, on to the religion questions. Babylon 5, Terra Nova, or Firefly?
Firefly.
Okay.
Yeah. Just a series that I liked and I enjoyed. And then the movie that came out after that, due to the fan outrage of canceling the show.
I know.
But yeah, I've had a great time watching the series and the movie. Yeah, and enjoyed the fans. The excitement generated around the show is something else. I mean, that is an insane fan base, insane, and
yes.
My kind of people.
Yes, they're very caring though. and very dedicated. And I thought the movie was a wonderful craft of storytelling because you didn't have to have known the series to watch it and enjoy it. But if you did know the series, you didn't feel like you were being beaten with this information that you already knew.
Do you ever go to the brown coat ball?
No.
I was asking him.
No, I have not. But I will say that one time I was at Dragon Con with my friend Doug Burby, and we may have run into the real Captain Mal and Wash slumming with us, drunk as shit. And they are a hoot in person. I'm here to tell you.
I know how much booze Doug took to that con.
That was many years back, but
that con.
Memorable.
Yes, a literal trunk load from the Class 6, apparently.
It was something.
Now we're going to go with the polytheistic questions. Sword of Shannara, Wheel of Time, or Forgotten Realms?
Yeah.
Or game
I'm
that actually
on this one. I'm not familiar with any of them.
Okay, fine.
So,
how about Lord of the
Pern?
Rings? Pern is not sci-fi, you idiot.
You did it. You did it. I'm clipping that. That's going on my ringtone. I got her 2 minutes. Fantasy.
I am going to kill you. It is sci-fi. She won a nebula. It's sci-fi.
One word. Dragons. Fantasy.
One
Done.
word. 2 words. Genetic engineering. Sorry. Shane's like, I have no idea why they're arguing.
That's fine. No, carry on, please. It's entertaining.
So, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, or Harry Potter then?
I like Game of Thrones, even though the ending was shit on HBO. But
No. They were beta testing it for Martin. So the books will have a better ending.
In that case, fantastic.
Did you ever listen to the Angry Staff Officer podcast where they broke all that stuff down? Like the failure.
Now I'm going to.
They just take everything from like the logistics side and tell why everything about that movie is a failure from start to finish. It's glorious.
Yeah, I gotta say, every time I watch the battles, I cringe. I get it; it's fantasy, but let's not discard tactics, for goodness sakes. I mean, having people just run at each other with swords is, well, dumb.
Yeah.
However, I've
seen their eye out.
Lieutenants do dumb things.
Yeah.
True story.
So, since we like both science and fantasy, what was your first love though? Sci-fi or fantasy?
Oh, sci-fi, easy. Yeah, I mean, I was a young kid in the 70s, and we were still putting men on the moon back in those days. And I remember as a little kid wanting to be an astronaut when I grew up, as a lot of us did. That was still, something in the national zeitgeist. People were talking about NASA all the time, and where we're going next. And then, Star Wars came out, and I remember being a 5-year-old kid seeing it in the theaters, super excited, and that got me hooked. And then Battlestar Galactica came out soon after that, and yeah, I was set for life. Big sci-fi fan ever since.
Well, that
but
fits.
The genre's put out a lot of great stuff over the years, before and since, and yeah, I'm still a big fan.
So what was your first memory of the speculative fiction genre?
I'm sorry?
What was your first memory of sci-fi and fantasy?
Yeah, I guess it would be, Star Wars. Those were the biggest impacts on me as a young kid. That really set the hook. Darth Vader and, Luke Skywalker and all the rest. And of course you had the sequels, which when you're 5 and the next sequel comes out 3 years later, that's a lifetime. You got to wait. And then you got to wait another 3 years for the next one. Again, another lifetime. That's torture for a kid, for goodness sake. These kids today, they get Star Wars movies every year. They don't know what the struggle was like.
No, they have no clue.
Now you got to shake your fist at the sky and, tell them how you walked uphill both ways. So what is
no?
absolutely? So what is it that you love about speculative fiction as a genre?
I think because I'm not a hard science person, so I'm a bit more into space opera. I'm more into the idea of the human condition being overlaid against different backgrounds and environments. I'm more into the characters and the situations. Obviously Star Wars is not hard science. It's hot garbage when it comes to science, but it's entertaining as hell to watch. Just like Battlestar Galactica. I mean, yeah, these things move around like they're in atmosphere. I get it. Still, I love the show.
I would say
so it's more about
Battlestar had more science.
Say again?
Battlestar had more science than
Yes, absolutely. Acknowledged. But I'm more about the human stories. And I absolutely is where I'm going to go on a Battlestar tangent here. It's clearly influenced my work. But the original Battlestar Galactica is awesome. I love it. I still love it to this day. The new series, I also love it. I treat them as equals, very separate things, very different vibes off those shows. But I dig them both.
All right. So how did your love of speculative fiction as a genre transition into your writing stories in the wild space that it is?
So I think I started getting into short stories when I was in junior high school, writing them, reading them, listening to audio versions of them. What was it? Harlan Ellison, A Boy and His Dog. But heard that one on audio back in junior high. That was a long time ago. That sort of thing was very interesting. And so there was a group of us nerdy kids back in junior high that were into writing short stories and speculative fiction, and it sort of took root back then, and it was 30 something years ago when I said, I want to write books someday, and sort of took a back seat to the career, and now obviously I'm taking it serious, and that's where I want to go.
We knew you were taking it serious when you asked to come on our podcast. That's the
Very
sign
much
of
so.
absolutely
I love the
serious
podcast.
author. All right. So many authors let their own real life experience influence the stories they tell. So were there any specific formidable moments that shaped you as a storyteller?
So the two books that I've written so far, working on the third, almost done. My military career has clearly shown through in the writing. I'm a big military history nut. That comes through in the writing. The two are intertwined. The characters in my books are based loosely on people I've known over the years and some of the dumb shit that I've seen. Some of the great stuff too. If you read it, these books are very much oriented towards the veteran community. If you're a veteran, you're going to read my books and you're going to go, oh yeah, I know a son of a bitch just like that. Or I know this great person I used to work for just like that. It'll resonate because I'm drawing upon real people and real experiences when I write about these things. So yeah, it's all interwoven in there.
Okay. You're muted,
Not
Doc.
everybody in my books is bad, but a lot of them are.
You're muted, Doc.
I hate doing that. Okay, so you mentioned that you're in the Army, and that you've spent lots of time with the, I can't ever say that phrase without wanting to giggle. Your time in the Big Weenie and how it affects your stories you tell.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So it's given me endless, infinite material to work with. Soldiers, NCOs, officers, they all are gold. The things that they do, I don't even have to embellish some of the stories. I just change the names to protect the guilty. But I haven't done that exactly. It's fiction. I change it up a little bit, but holy moly, I wouldn't have
Just
to.
so you don't get sued.
Say again?
Just so you don't get sued, if nothing else.
Right. I have a writing project that I'm going to do in the future where I'm going to use a pen name just for that reason, because things might be a little too close to actual events. Stay tuned.
Yeah, she laughs at the whole big green weenie thing, which came about because an officer always told us that that's what the Army was, because everyone got to bend over and take it.
Oh,
and I never
Bohemian,
forgot
right?
that expression. Yep.
Oh no, it's so accurate. We did have one soldier who tried to turn in his 2 weeks notice.
Of course. Of course.
Wait. Did it work? Why didn't I think of this?
Oh, it didn't work. And he's like, and he just didn't come in. He's like, well, I turned in my 2 weeks notice.
I had, when I was battalion commander of 148 Infantry, a basic training battalion, we had 2 go AWOL. And they got their legal advice from a website on the internet, because the internet knows everything. And so they learned that if they went AWOL and they were gone for 30 days, they'd be dropped from the rolls. They also learned on said website that if they drove down to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and turned themselves in after drop from the rolls, that the Army would just process them out. And that would be the end of it.
I mean, eventually.
That's what usually happens, except when I'm the dick battalion commander and I sent people out there to bring them back so I could court-martial them, much to their chagrin. So the key takeaway is, don't believe anything you read on the internet and assume that your battalion commander is a dick. You'll be fine.
That's why, as a good sergeant, I avoided the BC like he had the plague.
As most of them do.
I thought it was because of your habit of getting demoted.
I mean, that only happened 3 times. And to be fair, being a corporal sucked anyway.
Did you see the Army Times that had an article apparently, and they're now going to make people be corporals before they get their NCOs?
No, I did not see that. But
Yeah,
I don't think Shane could comment on
I think nobody's ever going to get promoted again.
Well, the second time they realized that I wasn't going to hold corporal, so they just made me a sergeant instead, because, you know, that's going to work out for everybody. I guess it's true. If you mess up enough, they'll promote you.
Shane's got no comment on that one. So,
luck and timing. Luck and timing.
So, does it affect how you engage as a reader with the stories you read?
Yes. So, you know, you want to try and obviously give the reader something that they're going to find entertaining, that they're going to find something in there that's important to them. You don't want to just, you know, everybody knows you don't want to do info dumps, and you don't want to get too technical, and you want to have something that people appreciate, that people can sort of get into, and it sparks an emotional response. And I think that's hard to do as a writer, but I think that's the ultimate goal as you put a story together.
All right. So transitioning away from the writing side, let's talk about things from the fan angle. And I'm stealing these questions from Doc, because she normally gets to answer these or ask these. But have you gotten any cool fan art or had anybody cosplay your characters yet?
Cosplay, no, though that would be cool if somebody wants to. I'd really be interested in seeing that. Send me pictures of the cosplay of my characters, nothing else. For the love of God.
See, I think that's a challenge, and there are going to be some veteran readers. They're going to be like,
I shouldn't put that out there. Anyway, my daughter did fan art for the book, the first book, and it's pretty cool. She sort of anime style, but it is really cool. And that's the only fan art I've gotten. thus far. But yeah, she did a really good job.
Her being a fan is much better than being embarrassed.
Not embarrassed by it. Love it.
Let's see. I can tell you when your episode is going live. So you will be out at the end of this month. So if they join your newsletter after hearing this, can you promise next month you'll include that picture your daughter drew so they can see the fan art?
Yes.
All they got to do is sign up for your newsletter?
Yes.
Seems like a fair trade to me.
Done.
Outstanding. So you heard it. His website and contacts will be in there. Sign up for his newsletter before the end of the month. And next month, you're going to get to see that awesome art. All right. So have you, what's the next thing? Has anybody asked for your autograph out in public?
I've received lots of messages asking for signed books, tons of them. So I'm happy to do that. And I get tickled every time somebody asks me to sign a book. I think it's great. I'm happy to do it. I've never told anybody no. I won't tell anybody no. I appreciate the fact that people are enjoying the work, and thanks for enjoying it. That's all. I put a lot of time and effort into it, and I'm glad people like it.
So we want to know what the people like then. So can you give us the Reader's Digest version of everything you've written?
So right now I'm working on my first series. I finished the first 2 of 3. The third one's almost done. I should have that finished up, I think, the end of this month. The manuscript, anyway. Probably won't be out published street legal for a bit. But what it's about is a couple of human civilizations. I don't have any aliens in this, though I do mention there was some contact at some point. But you have an advanced human civilization that is on the losing end of a war, and they run off to try and find some place to hole up for a while. They find a distant planet that they believe has been forgotten about, that used to be inhabited by humans. They show up, it still is. But these people have 1950s level technology, and now you have a spacefaring civilization shows up. Most of them are starving. Their spaceships are falling apart. They have nowhere else to go. So they make contact. And there are factions within this spacefaring star nation that are fighting with each other over the future of their people, whether or not to integrate peacefully with the people, these primitive people of this world, or to take over. And that's where the conflict is in the story. How these factions fight with each other for dominance, and how they interact with these people who up until now are just minding their own damn business until these space people showed up, and now they want to be included. And not necessarily everybody in this world wants them there. So it's an interesting tale, and lots of bloody violence.
The best kind of violence.
The best kind of violence. Indeed.
You got to unmute to ask your questions, by the way, just in case you forgot.
Thank you. Details. So we're here. You get the premise. Was it overindulging in grog, Ouija boards, psychedelics? Obviously not psychedelics. Sorry, expired candies. Yeah. Oh, was it too many sleepless nights going to school?
No, I was gonna do an alternate history. That's how it started. I'm a big history nut, as I told you before, and I had just gotten done touring a couple of battlefields on the Korean Peninsula, and I learned a lot, and it kind of inspired me. And I thought, well, I want to maybe write an alternate history, and I started writing that. And then it sort of expanded into, well, what if this planet was kind of paralleling human history in their 1950s technology, and these space people showed up? And how would that play out? And it sort of grew legs from there. And that was the genesis. That was the kernel that started growing, and turned into this big, long story. And, I hadn't written a novel before. And for some dumb reason, I decided to write a series as my first outing, which, boy, howdy, I do not recommend that to anybody. But it's been fun and it's been a learning experience, and I'm loving every minute of it. But what really got me right was my wife told me I needed to get a hobby, and I figured this was a good way for an outlet for some of my energy. So that's where it started.
I've noticed a pattern of our I'm blaming Cisca. So a lot of the veterans that we interview always say they started I saw that say they jump right into, maybe it's the military thing, but a lot of them just jump right into a novel series from the beginning and never do the short story route. The army types seem to make that a habit.
Yeah, maybe it's because we're a bunch of overachievers. I don't know. Or, we don't have realistic expectations on what our limitations are. Hard
Probably
to say.
that one.
Cisca's still
Doc,
muted.
I know. She's cursing us probably.
No, I have no idea what you're talking about. As you know, I'd never been on a podcast. Hey, you want to host one? Well, okay. Yeah, no.
You can blame Casey for that one. And you muted again.
I do blame Casey, who's Air Force, and she accepts the blame. So, let's talk about your cover though, because that is some really awesome art. And can you talk about what went into it, like what your feedback involved with it was? JR, Q putting up the cover.
Yeah. So the cover looks great, and I really like it. But that is not the design that I pitched to my publisher. My publisher is Eric Flint of 1632 fame, who is a great guy, and I love him to death. He's been really supportive. He's been a great mentor throughout this process. Couldn't have asked for a better person to learn and write for. But when I first pitched the idea, I sent him my daughter's fan art because I explained to her a concept of what I would like for the cover. I like people on my book covers. And I said, hey, I don't want to have a book cover with a bunch of spaceships on it because nobody likes that. So Eric was great. He said, hey, send me your concept and we'll give it to the artist. And then I got a book cover with spaceships on it, which I thought was funny. But it turns out the spaceship, art, it was fantastic. I don't know who the artist is that did it. I don't know where they came up with the idea, but I think they knocked it out of the park. I'm glad they didn't take my advice because this is a far better end state, and I really appreciate the effort they put in on it. I think it looks really great.
I really love that there's so many colors to it. I mean, it really makes it pop on a bookshelf because it's not just Starship on a black background through space.
Right, which I hate. I think those are really unattractive.
Yeah, there's a modern edge to it, and actually, the ships kind of remind me of Robotech.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. But there's like a modern edge, but also enough classic and the typeset is really well done, so that it's not like the title super stands out.
Yeah, no, I think it's really well done. I'm sorry, say it again.
I would totally get that framed. You should do that.
Well, I'm gonna do it. I got it on digits, so I suppose I might.
They say spaceship ass moves cover or moves books, so I guess they were right.
Yeah. This is a really great one. I like it.
So moving on, what would be your 30-second elevator pitch of this? Nick is going to miss having talked about that art cover, by the way.
I would say people from outer space show up on a planet with people with 1950s technology, and they start killing each other.
So what makes your series kind of special I mean, you're definitely going with the lost colony almost motif, or not lost, and they're just deliberately there, like deliberately not wanting to deal with people.
So they're a lost colony. It's explained in the book. I'm not giving much away. They were colonized. They were an advanced society on there, part of this Federation of Worlds, if you will. An ancient war breaks out, and the surface of the planet is sterilized in the course of that war. The jump point that led to their system was destroyed during the course of that war. Everyone believed that the surface was, for all intents and purposes, devoid of any life. And so because there's no jump point there anymore, no one travels and transits the system anymore, they thought everybody was killed there. It's basically forgotten about for about 10 millennia. And that's why these people who are losing this intergalactic war, or interstellar war rather, think that this would be a possible place where they could find, sanctuary and hide out. Middle of nowhere, capable of sustaining life, and there's no people on it. And then they show up and said, oh, heck. That's not the word they use. My language is a little more colorful in the books. But there were survivors, and they rebuilt society from nothing. But they're a little technologically further behind. And now these folks from outer space show up, and now they want to be part of their world, and they're not that excited about it. Most people. So some people are, because the space people have all these wonderful technologies and military edges and things that they can use for their political advantage. And so all the nations of this world, the political classes are licking their boots, trying to gain favor with the space people, and the space people are fighting amongst themselves to figure out how they're going to proceed. And there are factions that want to just get along nice, and there's factions that want to take over, and it's a lot of political intrigue. There's a lot of military stuff going on. There's a lot of shady backdoor stuff. I think it's great stuff.
So one of the tropes that you see a lot with that kind of setting is that it's harder to bounce back the second time because all of the easy to achieve resources that you would need to start that building are harder to get. Do you touch on that or do you just start with the situation as is?
No, I just jump right in. Society is what it is. There's 2 billion people on this planet. They've got 1950s level technology. They're all fighting this big war, and the aliens show up, and everything comes screeching to a halt.
Okay, speaking of tropes, which ones then do you feel like from the ashes of the dead world hits the best?
I don't have faster than light travel. I use the jump point system. That's kind of important in the story for them to navigate so far off the beaten path. That's an important piece to it. The space fighting. I do the relativistic space fighting. You don't have fighter planes in outer space like Star Wars. I try to give a nod to actual science, even though I'm not wedded to it, and I'm definitely not a scientist or a physicist or any of those other ists out there. I just do my best as a grunt to muddle my way through that, relying more on the human condition and the people who are in those ships fighting each other. It plays on the interstellar empire tropes. I use that the trope of the royal family because I have a constitutional monarchy in there. I'm hitting on a lot of tropes that have been used before, but I think I spin it a little differently in a fresh way that I hope the reader appreciates.
Okay. And so what genre or subgenre, I should say, of sci-fi would you classify this?
Space opera, definitely. Definitely not hard science fiction. If you're a hard science-ist kind of guy, you're probably not going to like this much. But if you're a veteran type and you like grunt stuff and you like Air Force stuff, and you like soldier and Marine stuff, you're going to love it. In fact, my Marine aviator colleague at work read it, and he read about my Marine aviators in there, and he was laugh out loud. He could not get enough of it. He ate it up. So if you've been in uniform before, this stuff resonates. Duh.
Fair enough.
Jared,
So I had to keep muting because I have to yell at the dog to stop eating my bed. So what's that?
Is it Elvis?
nothing.
Yes. Did I not mute it?
No.
I blame Cisca. Somehow it's her fault. So tell me about your main character. What makes them stand out in the crowded world of science fiction?
So my protagonist, and there perhaps could be two protagonists, but the protagonist that I've designated is he's a naval officer with this star nation who is tasked with saving the government of his world in the closing days of a losing war. He's not the most talented officer out there. He's pretty average. He's risen the ranks because everybody else is getting killed. He's given it. He's very dedicated, very hardworking. His ethics are all in line, but he's just caught up in something that's way bigger than him, trying to do the best he can. And the losing, and the end of the war, he decides that he's going to make the ultimate sacrifice and leave his wife and children behind to carry off the government and the royal family because that's his duty. And then as things unfold, he gets caught up in palace politics and the political class and things that he never cared about before and didn't want to deal with before. And he's being thrown into the mix, and he's forced to deal with these issues. And he's caught up in things that he didn't ever think he would be, didn't ever want to be. And he ends up taking on some leadership positions and making some decisions and doing some things that he was unprepared for and unwilling to do at the beginning of the story, without giving anything away.
So sometimes when you write, secondary characters sort of take on a life of their own and become equally as memorable. So do you have any of those in your story that you want to share?
Oh, God, yeah. That's where I say the second protagonist. So a couple of these characters started getting legs and carrying away with things. So on the other side of that is the folks that are in the 1950s level technology living on the planet. There's a couple of characters that I modeled off of British soldiers. And they're colorful characters, to say the least, in language and deed and how they carry themselves. And there's one or two characters that kind of steal the show. And it was one of those things where, I got this outline, I have an idea where the story's going, and then as I start writing, some of the characters just took off. And yeah, pretty interesting guys. They're definitely grunts. They're lower enlisted guys. Those are the most fun, I think, to write about. My most colorful characters in the series are my fighter pilots, who are basically aviator grunts, and my real grunts on the ground. And they're the most fun. They're the most colorful. They're the most interesting. Let's just put it that way.
I think the most colorful is accurate to life.
They'll resonate. If you've been around these kind of people, you'll recognize them.
So do you have any actual bad guys in the story?
Oh, yeah. So the bad guys are also military officers who are driven by power and politics. People who believe that they know better than everyone else and are better suited to chart a course for everyone else. But, doesn't matter how they get to this position of power. It's all a means to an end. They believe whatever they need to do to get there is fine, because once they're in charge, they're going to do the right thing for everybody because they know better. And horrible things are done because they believe, well, yes, these are bad, but the things I can do well once I get in power, well, it'll all even out in the end.
It never
So
seems true.
yeah, your bad guys have all rationalized evil things in order to achieve the greater good in their own mind.
So, if your characters met you in a back alley and they knew who you were and what hell you've treated them to, how would you see that playing out?
The protagonists, the good guys, we'd get stinking drunk together. Probably have a great time. The antagonist would probably put a bullet in the back of my head.
Well, at least that's quick, right?
Merciful, which is more than I can say for some of his other victims. I won't give that away.
Since we've talked about characters, what is your favorite character archetype?
Oh, usually the the slacker type. I love the slacker type. I don't know why, because I'm not one, but there's something about the slacker that I love. I just can't get enough of them.
Would the enlisted people that have worked for you along the way say the same thing about you?
About me?
Yeah,
about you loving the slackers.
Oh, no, probably not.
Okay.
Or they wouldn't know that I love the slacker, because sometimes you gotta, you love the slacker, but at the same time, hey, you got caught. You got to live up to the consequences. I didn't make the rules. I still love you, but I got to punish you. That sort of.
All right. So, what can you tell us about the larger universe? So, in many stories and series, the good ones anyway, the worlds where the story is told is as much a character as a protagonist. You've sort of given us the setup of the larger conflict, but what can you tell us about the planet where this is all happening?
So, well, where the story plays out, this planet is very isolated. It's in the middle of, nowhere as far as the rest of the universe is concerned. It's off the beaten path. There's no trade routes going through there. There's no jump points. It's just a forgotten rock in the middle of nowhere, which is precisely why these folks try to go there for oasis, for sanctuary. This is a place where they can go and hide. The rest of the universe is thousands of settled worlds with, huge governments, large empires, many of them, just interacting with each other on a massive scale. This is just a backwater forgotten about in the middle of nowhere, which is why they go there, and that's where the friction starts. That's where your conflict is generated. And then you've got a bunch of people that are on this world that ask themselves, nobody asked you to come here, and we don't want you to stay. And that's how it sort of plays out.
Okay. So from the ashes of a dead world is clearly part of a series. You've told us that there are currently 2 books out with the third one almost-ish done. But what's next for them after this trilogy?
So I want to move on to writing in somebody else's universe. I've already told Doug Burby and Mel Todd that I'd be writing a book in their universe. They've got an urban fantasy series. Yep, the Blood Wars series. I've got a story in mind, and I started writing on it a year ago. I kind of put it on the back burner so I could finish this series. But I will be writing a book in the Blood Wars series soon. It'll be, again, very army centric. A lot of gritty combat stuff in there. But I'm looking forward to that one. After that, I've got my own little project that I'm looking forward to. The military does not have a doctrine for fighting in megacities, so I want to write a novel about fighting in megacities in the near future, and kind of illustrate why we ought to have a doctrine for fighting in megacities. I can write professional papers all day long. Nobody reads them. But you write a novel and people read those. So I want to weave that narrative into a novel. And then I have another project after that. So I got a few in the queue.
We have a strategy. It's 3 words: rods from God. No more megacity.
Sure. That could be the direction. Who knows?
All right, Doc, next one is you.
Oh, you're so weird, JR. So every literary universe has its own internally consistent rules of science and technology. What sort of tech can we expect to see from the books? I mean, we know 1950s is from the planet, but what about, ETs?
Well, extraterrestrials are not in this series.
Okay. So but they're not from, okay, nobody's from Earth, really.
Yeah. So I do mention them in the first book. There is a nod to a war in the distant past with aliens. And then I do discuss the jump points are alien technology that basically human beings have learned to use, but haven't really learned to master. So those were inherited over time. But again, that's an important plot point. I don't want to give too much away. So not a lot of extraterrestrials discussed in the book, though they are talked about a little bit in passing. I wanted to keep this human on human interaction. As far as the technology goes, you've got starships, intergalactic travel, interstellar travel. I keep it relativistic. I don't, again, have faster than light travel with the ships themselves, but they use the jump points to achieve the same effect. But that creates the issue of if there's no jump point there, then they don't necessarily go that way, and it affects trade routes, military tactics, and operational considerations, and so forth.
You're muted.
Are these pew-pew chemical weapons, or are they lasers?
So I got all kinds. So on the ships, you got your energy weapons, you got your missiles, you got some kinetic weapons, a lot of electromagnetic stuff, electronic countermeasures. Then you have strike fighters and pursuit squadrons and electronic warfare packages. And then, of course, you've got your infiltration forces with Marines and soldiers and armored suits. And those guys, boarding parties get on ships, and they're not above using chemical weapons and dropping nerve gas in compartments to kill people, and flame units, and you name it, it's all in there. It's all on the table, with a couple of glaring exceptions. They've got their own version of the Geneva Convention. 2 things that are off the table is we don't destroy planets anymore, and we don't destroy jump points anymore. Those are too valuable for humanity. So those are off the table. Those are big no-nos. But everything else,
have some standards.
You gotta have the standards, right?
Right. You gotta have some standards.
So, of all your technology, which one is the one that you would want the most for daily use?
Yes. Well, yeah, I guess the armored combat suits are pretty good. I got a couple different versions. The Marines have their own version for boarding parties and taking ships down, and then the Army's got their own version, or for surface warfare, they're more like tanks, like bigger, bulkier, slower moving, but a lot more firepower, a lot more armor. So there's different variations on them, but yeah, those are pretty cool.
So how would you abuse that if you had it, like right now?
Right now?
Yeah.
Probably just for running around in the woods and blowing up stuff. I don't know. Just
a very grunt level answer.
Yeah, well, there's something constructive that's coming up with that.
I can see he never dealt with a carpool line. Destroying all carpool lines would be my answer.
If you had one of those, does that mean you would finally help Australia win the Emu War?
Well, I'd have to have some deep, in-depth discussions with the Australian government about that. But I would offer that up as something I could help them out with, because those things are bastards.
So, you mentioned that you don't have any aliens in this universe. Are we
No, they
ever
are in the universe, just not in the story.
Not in the story? Are we ever going to see them?
If I do another series in this universe, perhaps.
Okay. So, if you were to design an alien, and you kind of have an idea of them in the back of your head, because at least you know what they built, right? Did you design them out of whole cloth or purpose specific? I can talk.
You're still good. You're still hanging in there. Hey, so I was thinking cephalopod type aliens, moving in a watery type environment. I think that would be interesting to explore. I think that would be pretty interesting if you had sentient, like octopus or squid, and they had their own levels of technology, and that'd be something interesting to explore, or a type of alien to face off.
Okay.
Not as cool looking as some of the man-sized tigers and stuff that some people write about. I'm not knocking that. Saying I'd go in a different direction if I were to write.
It would definitely affect space combat because the vehicles would have more mass because they'd have to be flooded compartments.
Yeah.
It could be interesting.
It would
affect everything.
Pretty different to explore. That's where I would go.
Okay, so clearly this interview is winding down, but before we wrap up, was there anything about From the Ashes of the Dead World that we didn't ask that you want to tell us before we move on?
Just buy it.
That's a good answer.
Love it. You'll love it. Buy it.
So is it in all formats, or is it just ebook and paper right now?
Just ebook and paperback. You can get it on Amazon, or you can go to ringoffirepress.com, Eric Flint's website, and you can get ebook versions of that are not associated with Amazon. Whatever's most convenient for you.
Any plans to do audio version at some point?
Actually, I've been in discussions with Eric about that, and he's working on some different. The way they go about doing audio books, there's different options. So he's experimenting with it right now. My series is on the short list once he figures out which direction he wants to go with audiobooks. So I will say I'm pretty sure we're going to have an audiobook out eventually, but that's not totally confirmed.
Okay. So for people who might not know who you are, we did promise them that they would get a copy of that picture if they joined your newsletter. So can you tell all those people that are sitting on the edge of their seat waiting to know how they sign up, how they can find you?
ShaneGries.com.
Okay.
Come on over. And we'll square that away.
All right. That makes it easy. Any other socials that you use, or just that?
Just that one. Well, you can find me on Facebook too. I'm out there. I do have a social media presence, and I'd love to interact with folks that are interested in the work. So.
All right. Well, you can find us on our website at anchor.fm/blasters tack and tack blades, anchor.fm/blasters tack and tack blades. We are in discussion, as we've mentioned, about figuring out how to get that website up and running. So we have a landing page. And we do have a Twitter at SF_fantasy_show, Sierra Foxtrot _fantasy_show. We have an email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. You can send all hate mail to Nick Garber at blastersandbladespodcast.com, since he's not here to defend himself. We have a Facebook group where all the shenanigans happen at Blasters and Blades podcast over on the face space. So facebook.com/Blasters and Blades podcast. You can support the show with a monthly donation through the anchor.fm website, much like Patreon, or a one-time donation through buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. And be sure to put in the comment section that it's for the podcast. And we will keep your hosts, Nick Garber and Doc Cisca, duly intoxicated, and we will keep it up until their liver surrenders.
Okay. Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us for the absentee, overworked ADD Nick Garber and the crazy JR Handley. I'm Cisca. This was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next time with more nerd culture, cheesy jokes, picking on JR, and eventually one day he will learn what the nebulas are or what science is, maybe. Who knows?
It could happen.
Have a good